Nelson Mandela was the first black president of South Africa. Mandela was arrested several times during his adult life, often for his political ties with the African National Congress and his work as a lawyer. In 1961, Mandela led a campaign to sabotage South Africa's ruling apartheid government. He was arrested and sentenced to life imprisonment. However, he was released in 1990 after serving 27 years in prison. After his release, Mandela resumed his anti-apartheid activism. Mandela was successful and the African National Congress rose into power, thus establishing multiracial elections. After this, Mandela served as a president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. Another important actor was Chimamanda Ngozi, African writer that focuses on feminism and its effect on women in Africa. Also, Desmond Mpilo is a South African social rights activist and retired Evangelical bishop who rose to worldwide fame during the 1980s as an opponent of apartheid.
Issues. Africa is a beautiful continent with their special tribes that are unique, diversity of languages, and its culture. These are some of the lovely things about the continent of Africa. But also there's a lot of issues in Africa right now. The issue that took all our attention was the one of endless poverty. The reason is that the African countries have some of the most valuable natural resources in the world, but people in Africa are still poor. This happens because of the warlords, the corruption smugglers, and the thieves of Africa wealth. Another issue in Africa, believe it or not, is the international aid. It's supposed to do good, but right now it's doing more harm to Africa than good. The reason is that it became a tool used for gaining governments and organizations to corrupt the African countries, and they get them to behave so irrationally towards their own population and the basic interests of their countries. A massive challenge that the Africa faces is that there's a lot of illness, especially those in the Western world. The continent of Africa lies some of the most deadly diseases that have claimed more lives than in history than war and hunger together. For example, in the continent of Africa, HIV is among the 10 most widespread diseases. There are more than 32 million people infected in the continent of Africa.
Hello, I'm gonna talk about the ecosystems in Africa. We got various types of ecosystems. We got the desert, gully forest, mountain, rivers, savanna, tropical forest, wetlands, and woodlands. Well, first I'm gonna talk about the desert. This is the in Africa they have the Sahara. This is the largest one in all the world, and it houses more than 300 different species of wildlife, including the African wild dog, the cheetah, the ostrich, and many species of birds and lizards. Then we have the mountain. The mountain ecosystem are those of high elevation on mountains in Africa. There are there are three different that are the mountain forest, woodlands of mountain, and savanna mountain, which due to the higher elevation tend to be cooler, but it also depends on the type of mountain.
Africa is a continent that's known because of its resources, especially when talking about minerals. Many countries' economies are sustained by these minerals. Oil and natural gas are the main resources found in countries like Nigeria, Angola, Congo, Ghana, and Liberia. It is estimated that 57% of Africa's exports are because of these resources. Talking just about oil, the continent contributed about 11% of the global production in the last 10 years. Another really important resource found in this country is gold. It is the most mined resource in Africa and it contributes to about 21% of the world's total. It is produced mainly in South Africa, Tanzania, Ghana, and Mali, amongst others, with South Africa being the biggest producer of both Africa and the world. In the 1970s, South Africa was able to produce 75% of the world's reserves. Diamonds are another of the important resources found in the African continent. It contributes to about 46% of the world productions. The top producers of the continent are Sierra Leone, Tanzania, Botswana, and Congo. Finally, although copper only contributes with 6% of the world's production, it is really important for many African countries. Zambia, for example, a country that relies on this mineral, is the top producer in Africa and the fifth in the world.
Achievements. Africa has a lot of cultural achievements. We can say that its best achievement was the creation of the pyramids, especially the Great Pyramids of Giza. The largest pyramid was built for Pharaoh Khufu. This pyramid was the largest building of the world until the early 20th century. The oldest pyramid in Egypt was built around 2630 before Christ. Valley of the Kings is another great achievement for this region, because inside of it contained 63 tombs of very important people of that time, and was made between the 16th and 11th century before Christ. Its major achievement during the modern era was to free themselves from the European empires and to create a democratic government in almost all countries of the region. Another cultural achievement was made by Nelson Mandela. He made the apartheid to end. The apartheid was a law that permitted white supremacy and racial segregation. Nelson Mandela ended this after being released of prison, in which he was inside for 27 years. He negotiated the end of the apartheid, bringing peace to a racially divided country.
Egypt, one of the oldest and greatest civilizations to ever exist. Thanks to a strategic settlement in which ancient Egyptians settled, the civilization quickly thrived and expanded, conquering neighboring civilizations and clashing against the Hittite Empire in the north. Home to the Great Pyramid of Giza and the Sphinx, Egyptian culture manages to still amaze and intrigue humanity. Since its birth to its demise, the Egyptian Empire was the birthplace of many great characters, like Pharaoh Ramses II, Tutankhamun, and Queen Cleopatra, who was the last queen of independent Egypt before the Romans conquered them, ending the 3,000-year-old empire in the year 31 before Christ. Carthage was a great African civilization, situated in northern Africa, in what is modern-day Tunisia. Since their capital, Carthago, had ports in the Mediterranean, Carthage quickly became a major economic power of the region, making Carthage the most powerful empire in the Mediterranean before the rise of Rome. The two titans of the region clashed in war 3 times before Rome managed to defeat the African civilization. Yet this didn't come without a cost, since Hannibal, a great Carthaginian general, almost destroyed the Roman Empire. The Zulu kingdom didn't have the lifespan of other major empires of the continent, yet they managed to conquer most of what modern-day Zimbabwe and South Africa is before their demise against the British Empire, the biggest empire ever seen. The Zulus had a reputation of being great warriors, and were not only feared and respected across the region, but also by the British soldiers who faced them. The British looked down to Africans as if they were inferior, so they tried to downplay Zulus' victories after the war. Still, their courage wasn't forgotten, and their spirit was seen as inspiration during the anti-apartheid movement.